morning I'm going to talk about humanitarian logistics. So the schedule for this presentation is going to be like this. First, I'm going to talk about some real tragedies and the main consequences of these tragedies. In the second part, I'm going to talk about the real problem and the variables when a natural disaster occurred. Then I'm going to talk about what is humanitarian logistics and how it can solve the problem before, and then examples of ineffective solutions, and the advantages and disadvantages of these solutions, and then the conclusion. First, those are three examples of natural disasters that I think we all have heard about and maybe give donations. The first one is in 2010, and it was the Haiti earthquake. It took the death from, was more than 316 people, 215 residents collapsed, and 30,000 commercial buildings had collapsed too. The second one is the tsunami in 2004 in the Indian Ocean, and it was one of the most devastating catastrophes in the history, killing over 230,000 people in 14 countries and inundating and collapsed communities, entire communities, with waves up to 30 meters. And not to be far, here in Colombia, in 1985, the Armero tragedy. It was because the eruption of a volcán, the Nevado del Ruiz, and it killed more than 20,000 people of the almost 29,000 inhabitants in the region. So when we see that it's a difficult, when a natural disaster occurs, it's very difficult to organize and coordinate all the donations and all the supplies that people need. Here I have some variables of what we need in this problem. The production, for example, you have to know what to produce, in what quantity, what quality, the transportation, the location, the inventory information, etc. First, supply in transportation, supply access points like ports and airports in almost all of the times are saturated rapidly. The second, storage sites in inventory, how much to maintain. Almost all of the times the means of transportation are inaccessible or not available, and it's a very difficult task to know how to get there. The second and the third and the most important is that victims need urgent medicines, supplies, and the time is very important because it's to survive. And finally, many products have expiration dates, and you have to know what the drugs, what is the expiration of the drugs, and many things that are important. So, to solve those problems exists humanitarian logistics. I don't know if you have heard about that, but humanitarian logistics is a branch of logistics, and logistics is a file in industrial engineering. And it's specializing in organizing and delivering the warehousing and supplies when a natural disaster or a complex tragedy occurs and affects a lot of area and people, and a lot of people. Even though in history we have heard about some ineffective solutions. For example, the criticism of the response to Hurricane Katrina. That was a very, very important tragedy. The residents in New Orleans who remained in New Orleans were without water and food and shelter. The deaths of several citizens after the tragedy by thirst, exhaustion, violence, and the storm itself had passed. It is very important because it is one of the disadvantages of humanitarian logistics. It doesn't misunderstandings between actors. And it's what happens here in this case. The government and non-government actors were not understand, and it was very difficult. The second ineffective solution is the criticisms to response in IT. It may be not the response, but the time after the tragedy occurred. Because it's estimated, for example, that 250,000 of displaced Haitians have since returned to the capital because they were unable to secure their work and their necessities in the rural areas. Or, for example, today many Haitians, most of them women and children, are engaged in daily struggles for access to their necessities. And this is the second disadvantage of humanitarian logistics. And is that it only emphasizes in the instant or the moment after the tragedy, but it doesn't think in long-term consequences of the tragedy, for example here, that people don't have any. However, with a good management of humanitarian logistics, we can solve all of these problems. And however those disadvantages, there are a lot of advantages. For example, with humanitarian logistics, we can use some methods or heuristics to make a fast delivery, low transportation cost, support local economy. For example, in donations, free or inexpensive, encourage nation, and most advantages. To conclude, it's very important to know that a poor management when a natural disaster occurs can cause a second disaster even bigger. So with humanitarian logistics, efforts should be made to keep donors, and international community immediately responds to with humanitarian logistics you can reduce difficulties and exploit all the resources and knowledge of the people.
Questions? Any questions? Please, questions? Answer a question. You're next. So go ahead and get your screen ready. No questions? I have a question. So, in terms of the earthquake in Haiti, what things do you think that you would do differently if you were in charge of that, of the activity there?
Maybe the criticisms that I say, maybe think more in long-term consequences and not only keep donations for the instance after the tragedy, but keep donations and encourage people to donate maybe months later, and maybe poor people are the most affected with these tragedies. So give jobs, maybe help them with their houses and everything like that.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.